Hello, everybody. It's the Gin and Tonic Show. My dingaling, your dingaling. I want you to play with my dingaling. Thank you, Doorknob Head, for putting this tune into my head. Now I will never be able to get rid of it again. And the other one was Ramadama Ding Dong. What was that? I can't remember. There's different songs which use this ding ding a ding a ling ling dong. Hello, everybody. It's the Gin and Tonic Show. It is Friday. It is the 18th of October. Yes, we're going. It's Christmas outside already. I'm walking around in a t-shirt outside, and it's classic Christmas. So it's quite weird. Welcome, everybody, to the Gin and Tonic Show. We are going to start a very new chapter today. I'm hoping that Faye and maybe Rob are going to pop in later. We'll have to see how it goes. But we're definitely going to start a new chapter today, which is going to be chapter 4, An-Nisa, the women. And we're going to have lots of fun because now we're going to go into the depths of the Quran. But before we do that, there are two things I'd like to mention. And I'd also like to welcome everybody. If you want to watch the Gin and Tonic Show live, there are different ways you can do that. You can go to Facebook now, go to the Gin and Tonic Show, watch it there. You can go to YouTube, watch it there. You can write comments, which are going to pop on here. Then what you can also do, if you want to chat, if you want to make comments, if you want to correct, if you want to ask, if you want to do anything, you can go and write a comment on there, and then I'm going to respond to that. Or Thunder is going to, sorry, Christian Prince's bastard son is going to, he's not Thunderdew today, and he's not anything thunderous today. Today he's Christian Prince's illegitimate or bastard son. He's so lucky. He always gets new names. I never get to that. Anyway, so we're going to respond to that. And also afterwards, if anybody leaves a comment on the video, I do sometimes pop in and see the comments, what people write, what they say, and I try and comment on those. So what we do is we address. We don't attack, we critique, we address Islam. Okay, we use facts, reality, and reasoning. We don't talk about other faiths, ideologies, religions, whatever you want to call them. We focus on Islam. So what we do is condemn categorically any abuse, oppression, slavery, violence, and so on and so forth. What we also do is we embrace free speech, not threats, nothing like that. But anybody can say anything they want here. There's no, in my eyes, there's no list of English words in the English language that you shouldn't be using for any reason. I think the English language is pretty much complete, and it is changing. It is a living language, and we can use it. And now to go around and say, well, here's a list, and you're not allowed to use these words, is quite, well, it's asinine in my view. So I do not have any problem with different words. I also don't have a problem with other people using words that some might find insulting. I'm not easily insulted. And if I do decide to feel insulted, well, I'm going to tell you so, and that's it. So if you want to do anything, then if it's Islam, you're welcome. If anybody wants to know anything, if anybody, I'm going to be watching the chat, the live chat. So if anybody does have a chat, hello to the chat, hello to, and I see it's all YouTube. There's nobody in the chat so far from Facebook. Thank you very much for your comments. Thank you very much for your questions and constructive criticism. I like being corrected. I like being told you've done something wrong, because that's what you learn. So we try and be decent, and we want to let the Quran speak for itself, not scholars, not whatever. No, we try and read the Quran, and that's what we try and do. Don't go to Patreon. Don't go to PayPal. Everything here that you see is free. All right, Thunderous, how's it going, my man?
Hi guys, hi everybody, hi Stops, how are you? Hope you've had a good week. Just before we start the show, what I'd like to do is actually to give a big shout out to somebody who actually commented on our previous week's video. His name is, and forgive me if I mispronounce this, is Bandem Swadika. I make special mention of him because he's over in the way of Indonesia in the Far East. So that just goes to show how far our audience are from America all the way through Europe, Portugal, and into Indonesia. So excellent. Thank you for communicating with us. And hopefully one time in the future, he said he's going to come on the show. He's going to indulge in us the Islamic influence over in the Far East. And the troubles that they are facing over there. So looking forward to when he can make it on the show.
Oh, it's early morning there.
Yeah, he did say it was about 3 o'clock in the morning, and the show that we have is obviously Friday night, 8 p.m. So I did say it's going to have to be a sacrifice on his part for it to be a late one. So it's the only way he can get involved.
But you can tell me he's always welcome now. Okay, I can only do them because I worked in Malaysia, so I know the Malaysian accent. I don't know if in Indonesia. I've been to Jakarta, but only for like 2 days. So I don't remember that. I don't even know if they have a different jilt or something. I can only do the Malaysian one. Okay, I'd like to do two things. One thing, what I don't understand is because I've spent because now for the last couple of weeks, I've been on Facebook, something I've avoided in the past, and I think I shall avoid again in the future because it's a time killer. Okay, you're spending too much time there. It's the same with Discord. I mean, I had an interesting conversation there yesterday with a guy who, after a while, started screaming and ranting and called me, I can't even remember, an imbecile. I don't know. He came up with so many swear words within 2 minutes. It's absolutely amazing. And he calls himself a PhD of, I don't know what, of everything. He has the best words, and he studied everything. He knows everything. He knows the Quran backwards. He studied it, and he's memorized everything. The funny thing is, when I asked him about a specific sentence, he didn't know where it was. He didn't know what it says, and he couldn't apply it. So he got so cross with me. It was quite amazing. So I don't quite understand why people act like that. Okay, if Muslims, they routinely criticize other religions, other cultures, moral systems, especially the West, where I don't even know what West is. And then there's a guy called I forgot his name. Farid. There you go. Now he's a joke. Okay, he's very funny. And I'm trying to get him on the show to ask him what the hell his story is, to see what it is that he's actually trying to achieve. Because at the moment, he's just sort of making a joke out of himself by commenting on what apostate prophet does. Now, I think most of us, I don't know, the regulars will know apostate prophet was on the show. And one thing that he made very clear is that he always goes and sources his material. Okay, so the thing is that apostate prophet, doesn't say things lightly, like, just like that. It's not a la-di-da thing. And now this Farid guy thinks he can criticize him by going back to the Quran, what it originally says, and then saying, well, that's what God says, and therefore it's right. I mean, it doesn't work like that. Okay, if God says you need to slap your women, then it says you slap your women. You can't then go and says, well, if God says it, there must be a good reason for it. So we should be looking at the wives, what they're doing wrong. So Sword to Jannah says, stop spamming supports incest. I support incest. No, Muslims do. Muslims support incest because it's in the Quran. Incest is in the Quran. It's allowed in the Quran. It's halal. There's nothing haram about it. I am somebody who says, no, don't. I said we shouldn't criminalize it. We shouldn't be, like criminalizing people who have sex if it's like brother and sister or cousins or whatever. We shouldn't criminalize it, but it's still something that I have, and I said this very clearly. I have the built-in biological barrier. I have this disgust factor. So I don't support incest at all. So I don't know where people get this from. Anyway, so the funny thing is that Muslims critique everything. And the Quran itself, I mean, we've seen this now in the first 3 chapters of the Quran, how many times it criticizes other people and other faiths. And the funny thing is, if I go to any country, all of this speech somehow is protected. But when we do the same thing and we inspect what the Quran says and we find things that are wrong or inconsistent or contradictory or mistaken, then it's Islamophobia. Why is it that Muslims can do this and it's protected, and now even left-wing people, non-Muslims, are attacking everybody that critiques Islam? How is that possible? Is that really the success of the propaganda of the Muslims that is having an effect somehow, that everybody is turning against those who critique Islam? Quite strange. Thunder, any opinion from your side?
I think the difference with all other religions in comparison to Islam when you're critiquing it is that you can critique any other religion or faith or doctrine with impunity, because you're not going to get a fatwa or a death sentence on your head. Whereas when you're critiquing Islam, you're creating a menace to society. You are the problem because you know what the repercussion is. So I've always seen it as this is why people have a problem with Islam being critiqued, because you're then creating some kind of hostility between the non-Muslim and the Muslim. So it's easier just to condemn the non-Muslim when he critiques Islam, because you can do it with impunity.
Yeah, but why is it then protected the other way around? Why can't Islam say what it wants to? And if we do even the slightest hint of critiquing, we're slapped over the wrist.
That's because they use their right of free will and free speech.
The freedom of religion, I suppose. Yeah.
Yeah, so they'll use the argument of free speech. So there you go. See, because you see, when Islam critiques another religion, the other religion or the adherents of the other religion do not respond with belligerence. They may be hurt,
exactly.
but they don't politically respond either. Whereas Islam is very clever to respond politically, and also it happens in Europe. Europe is now progressively becoming more and more influenced by Islam because of the number of immigrants that are increasing the numbers. So politically speaking, a lot that's if you like a vote base for many politicians to get their vote from. So they try to appease the Muslim minorities, because that's going to be their voting base in some time in the near future. But also at the same time, look at the influence that Islam is having on schools. You know, what with diets, what with celebrations, what with the teaching of equality for LGBT movements and such. It's not just one thing; it's many things. It's got many, if you like, spheres or facets. It's not just the one thing with Islam.
Yeah, I agree. Cool. The strange echo is there's something with Christian Prince's illegitimate bastard son, that whatever we say somehow feeds back in his computer, then comes back. It's quite weird. It's got this funny, this hollow metallic echo. I know exactly what you're talking about. Now, what? Okay, so this is typical. I mean, Sword to Jannah is making like really weird claims, and then Thunder said, "Well, why don't you come and join us? And then let's talk about this." And what is the reply? Nah, I'm too much of a coward. I don't think I'm up to this. I will not be personally put on the spot so that you can question me. Okay, and here this is okay. I'm not saying every left winger critiques those who critique Islam. I'm saying those who are left leaning for some odd reason tend to be the ones who do, and those who are less left leaning tend not to. I don't know why that is. And the further left you go to all the way to Antifa or something, then they're outright crazy. They will scream at people. They will beat people. I mean, there's plenty of people who get attacked who just for some, and it could be mild criticism of Islam. Okay, let's say a cleric in Canada was saying our traditions are all evil and saying Muslims should not vote. But we're saying Muslims they would be right. Exactly. Yes. This is it's double standards, I think. Okay. So yeah. Try criticizing Hinduism and see how many death threats you get. Well, I critique Hinduism as well. I've never had any adverse reaction. People are quite cool about this. And the funny thing is, like I always say, even if you are in the Middle East, you can critique Islam there, and people are quite, they're quite blasé. They say, okay, there's things wrong, but it doesn't matter. We just go for it. We just hope that we're doing the right thing, and that's it. and they don't react in any which way. But in Europe, people are so, I don't know, it's so easily flustered. So yeah.
Sort of Jana, you've made a comment there that I support LGBT, fake ex-Muslim, fake Christian. I am an ex-Muslim, but I don't support LGBT, not in the slightest. However, I do support their right to exist and use whatever life course they want to use as their free will to go and do so. I don't agree with the lifestyle, but I'm not going to condemn the person. So you've really got the wrong point there.
Yeah, and I find it to be symptomatic that when Islam gets into a brain, this is what happens. I mean, look at this. I wish I was as brave as you. You hide behind that avatar and be Rob's earpiece at Speaker's Corner. Now, I'm thousands of kilometers away. I can't go to Speaker's Corner. And Rob says, well, why don't we combine it? He goes there, and then he doesn't go as himself, but he lets me do the speaking as an exactly the earpiece, just for fun. Now, we experiment with different things. It's not that I'm a coward and I don't dare go to the Speaker's Corner saying, of course I do. I don't, there's nothing wrong with that. It's just that I don't want to spend $5,000 just to go to Speaker's Corner and say the same thing that I can say here. And the other thing is, because Muslims constantly threaten me, Muslims constantly say, well, look, if you do this, then you will never work again in the Middle East. That is the reason why I am prudent. I'm not stupid. I'm not blind with rage that I run now and make myself known to everybody and say, here I am, and you are stupid. No, I know exactly what I'm doing, and I do it for a reason. And the reason is Islam. And the reason is the built-in violence in Islam. That is the problem. So there you go. Okay, the other thing I wanted to say is that I found something really fascinating on Facebook. There's a lady there who came up with this. Is it a taunt? I don't actually know what it is. She came with two different stories, scenarios, where she said father one has a 15-year-old daughter who was raped, who's now pregnant, and she begs for an abortion, but he won't let her have an abortion. Instead, he pulls her out of school, he makes her work on the farm and in the house, and doesn't let her go anywhere on her own. Scenario two, this is a father who has a 15-year-old daughter who was raped and is now pregnant. She begs for an abortion, but he won't let her have an abortion. Instead, he pulls her out of school, he makes her work on the farm and in the house, and doesn't let her go anywhere on her own. Now, you will notice, even the way that I'm reading it, that these are identical scenarios. The thing is that one of these two fathers loves his daughter and he strives to do the most moral thing he can think of. The other father is a mean, sadistic, despotic man who strives to make his daughter and her future child as miserable as possible for the rest of their lives. Now, if you look at the two scenarios, father with a daughter, pregnant, raped, pregnant, and now he takes her out of school and makes her work on the farm. One father loves his daughter, the other one is a sadist. And you can easily apply either one of these explanations to the scenarios. But the question now is, can you use your moral compass to say which is which? Can you use your moral compass to say which of these fathers is the religious one? And did you use your religious moral compass to define which is which? And if yes, how did you do that? Or did you use a secular moral compass to define which is which? And if yes, how did you do that? Now, for me, this is an incredibly fascinating thought experiment where you have an identical situation, but you have two very, very different interpretations, where one is mean and the other one is benign. How do you come to that conclusion? How do you do that? And this is what is so fascinating. What moral compass does a religion tell you? And how do you do that? How do you use it? How do you apply the moral compass, either if you are a non-believer, secular, or if you take a moral compass which is dictated, which is restricted by your faith, your religious moral compass. And that is fascinating for me, because they don't, it's not clear how a theist will take a decision here, because a theist, it's very clear, can take both, because she was raped, is pregnant, and so he now has to abuse her. But you can also say, well, a theist can say, well, she was raped and was pregnant, now he has to support her. So he takes her out of school so that she doesn't get bullied or something, and then keeps her at home and gives her homeschooling and education. So the one is supportive, the other one is destructive. So either person can do either one. But how do you do this? How do you apply a moral compass to these two situations and come up with two very different explanations? Any ideas, Thana?
No, I wouldn't want to comment on that.
Because I think this is really fantastic. How you can take the same situation and then come to very, very different conclusions. I found that's really fascinating, and this is why I thought, let me bring it up here quickly to show people, because it's I find it mind-boggling how that works, how you can play with different scenarios and come with different models and different ideas, and then just develop them inside your brain. I thought this is really brilliant. Okay, is everybody ready?
I'm ready. I'm sure the audience are waiting as well.
Now, the thing is that going into chapter 4 is going to, well, bring us into the meat of Islam, as it were, okay? Because this is now going to go into the real workings, to the insides of Islam. Because before it was, well, the covenant here, the covenant there, and men are this and this. I mean, there already were some. The funny thing is, because the Quran is totally chaotic, okay, there's no structure, there's nothing there. There are different sentences which were already shown in connection with women. So An-Nisa, the women, is not really only about women, but there are some sentences in the previous chapters that we went through, which already gave us an idea of the treatment of women, how they are objects, how they are less than men, how they are a whole degree underneath the men, and things like that. So we've already seen that. So let me just quickly share the screen, and then we go with this. Oh, does it say service unavailable? Okay. That's quite funny, except it is available. All right. Does that work for everybody? Should I make it a bit bigger? Oh, it's the wrong picture. Okay.
Yeah.
So why doesn't it give me the one that I want? This is very strange. Why does it say service unavailable if it's here, and then it gives me a different picture? This is so weird, eh? Okay, now if I go smaller, it should change, but this doesn't do that. Okay. There we got it. Okay. I don't know. This was quite weird. I've never had this before. So there you go. Chapter 4. Sentence.
Right, let's get it
Number
on.
1. I hope everybody's ready for this. Let me do the Sahih International first. It's a pity Faye isn't here to read the Arabic for us. O mankind, fear your Lord, the one. Oh, this is the corpus. No, I don't want a corpus. Let me go straight to Sahih International. O mankind, fear your Lord, who created you from one soul. I thought we were created from water, and created from it its mate, and dispersed from both of them many men and women. And fear Allah. Oh, again, fear Allah, fear your Lord, through whom you ask one another and the wombs. Indeed, Allah is ever over you an observer. Yusuf Ali, on the other hand, thinks this says, O mankind, reverence. I thought you say revere your guardian Lord, who created you from a single person, created of like nature his mate, and from them twain scattered countless men and women. Reverence Allah, through whom ye demand your mutual and the wombs, for Allah ever watches over you. Okay, the first thing that I see is, oh my kind, fear your Lord. And then fear Allah. Again, we see that you need to be afraid. This is not somebody that you joke around with. So if this guy says, listen, do this, you better do this, or else. And then it says, who created you from one soul? And we've heard that we were not created from one soul, because so far we've been created from, what was it, from a drop of blood and from clay, from dust, from all sorts of things. And now suddenly we are created from one soul. But I suppose you can take this metaphorically and say, well, whatever.
But the
Created
thing is,
from his mate, dispersed from both of them, and fear Allah. Okay, this I don't understand. Thunderous, what is your take on this?
well, my take on this is first. I mean, one of your translations says, "Who created you from one soul," right? So that's kind of leaning towards other writings that say that Eve was created as a byproduct of Adam. So something happened, something was taken from Adam, and that was fashioned into Eve. Okay, let's go along with that narrative. What I don't understand is, if Eve was created as a part of Adam, then why is the intelligence of a woman deficient in comparison to Adam?
Yeah, it doesn't make sense, does it? Yeah.
If she is in likeness of Adam, then the intelligence of a woman should be equal to Adam. If she's in likeness, if her
but Thunder, then it should also be logically consistent that she has the same rights and the same standard and status and everything. But we've already heard that she doesn't. So this is wrong.
Yeah, of course it is. This is what I'm getting to. But I wanted to start off with one point, and then as the chapter goes forward, we will see that this one verse here, how the chapter starts, isn't consistent with the narrative of the chapter as it progresses.
Yeah.
And straight away from this one point here, a woman and a man are not equal, even though a woman was taken from the man, fashioned in the likeness of a man.
Yeah, exactly. And the funny thing that just strikes me is people who criticize us for reading the Quran are actually, I mean, all we're doing is quoting the Quran. What they're doing, and they don't realize this, I think, they're actually criticizing their God, who apparently allegedly wrote this stuff. So if this stuff is so stupid, is so wrong, is so like complete gibberish, it's not my fault. I did not write this. So why do people critique us for reading this when all we're doing is reading the Quran? Why do I need to block out certain words and blur some of the others and then substitute some words with things that are somewhere else in the Quran? I don't have the instruction manual to read the Quran, except the Quran itself, which says, Thunderous, your favorite line.
This is a book made clear, a book easy to understand.
There you go. Read chapter 3, sentence number 138. What does it say? Everything in here is clear and explained. Okay? So what do you want? You've got a Quran which says it's clear. There is no doubt in the book. It's very, very, very clear, straightforward. And then we read it, and then you tell us we are assholes for reading the Quran.
I think also to bear in mind in this, one other point I wanted to bring out of chapter 4, verse 1, is that some Muslims believe that the soul of human beings was in heaven before we came to earth.
Yeah, this is
So,
okay, I was going to go there. Yeah, exactly. Good point. And this is where we get this from. Carry on talking.
well, the point is, how can we be the progeny of Adam and Eve if we were all in existence in heaven before we came to earth? Then we are, by implication, not the progeny of Adam and Eve. Because
Yeah,
we
Ibn
had,
Abbas does not say that.
sorry?
Ibn Abbas does not say that.
No, but Muslims like Benny have come on the show and said, yeah, we made this agreement in heaven before we came to earth. It's all part of the
Yes,
test.
I've
We
heard this
agreed to
also.
the test. So when
Yeah.
you look at some Muslims who believe that we're in heaven before we came to earth, of which we have no recollection of, then by implication of this ayah, we are not the children of Adam and Eve. I don't know, and it's not worked out or explained. How is it that Adam and Eve have children? Because the Quran should say that Allah transfers the soul of the human being or the human or the spirit creature, whatever we were in heaven, to the womb of a woman at the moment
Yeah,
of conception. That's what it should say, but the Quran doesn't say that.
it doesn't say that. And the other thing that would imply is that there would be dust in heaven, right?
Well, this goes back to what I've said along, and sometimes, and sometime in the future in the Quran, I want to bring a discussion about how Islamic heaven uses, if you like, the plane of existence that we live in and applies it to the spirit realm, which is totally illogical. Now, bearing in mind, 123,999 prophets have come to earth prior to Muhammad. Not one of those religions, faiths, or belief patterns, or whatever, talks about heaven in the same way that Muhammad does. There's an inconsistency there that doesn't seem to correlate with the Quranic narrative that we have now. In effect, what I'm saying is, then you're asking for the whole of mankind to have corrupted every one of those prophets' messages before we get to Muhammad, which is just totally illogical and unsubstantiated.
Yeah. The funny thing is, the Jalalains, what they say is that this follows the Bible, because in the Quran it doesn't say anything about Adam and Eve. There is nothing about a rib.
Right. The thing is to say, it doesn't say anything about that, because I was actually looking at some of this as well before, but it turns around and says it leaves it to ambiguity, because it talks about those other religions are following a tradition, because I think it talks about something in the Talmud as well. I've forgotten where it is. I'm just having a look at my notes now about that. So give me a moment, if you will, because I've lost my
Okay.
track.
Well, the other thing is also factually incorrect, because we know that the basic default shape is the female, and then the male is made from the female. I've described all that in the in a video, what actually happens, which ducts are formed when and how, and if the SRY gene does not fire, what happens, and then this actually stays a female even though it is a male. So there's a lot of things that are completely factually incorrect in the actually well the Quran doesn't mention anything, but here and this stuff's here, this with Adam and Eve, and that this was, you know, that she was made from his left rib and things like that. That's totally wrong. That's factually incorrect. But the Quran doesn't actually say this, okay?
No, but what it does do is it details how. I'm just reading now from IslamicStudies.info, which is where I did the research from a while back. The details of how of that being its mate was created are not known to us. The explanation is generally given by the commentators of the Quran, and which is also found in the Bible, is that Eve was created out of the rib of Adam. The Talmud is even more detailed in that it says that Eve was created out of the Adam's 13th rib on the left side. The Quran, however, is silent on the matter, and tradition was thus adduced in support of this statement does not mean that it was often thought to be. It is thus better that we leave the matter in the same state of ambiguity in which it was left by God, rather than waste our time trying to determine in detail the actual process of the creation of one's mate. That's IslamicStudies.info's summary on chapter 4, verse 1, about how Eve was created.
You know?
So
So
they
it's
have no
ambiguous, it's vague, and it doesn't tell us anything concrete or anything that we can use. It's just a basic statement. Well, you were all created. It's just a claim, without giving us any details. We're not told how, when, where, or how. It's just you were created.
I will go one further and say the only reason there's no detail in this ayah about Eve's creation is because Muhammad didn't know. He didn't know that.
Yeah, exactly. No,
He
they
did.
didn't know at the time. And this is the funny thing, that now suddenly people are coming along and saying, well, this is embryology. And there's nothing here on embryology. There's nothing here on nature. There's nothing here on the development, the human development in the womb. There's nothing here that would resemble nature at all. This is creationism, literally. It says here, created you. So this is creationism. It is not a description of what actually happens. No, this is taking control from away from nature and putting it in the hands of some creator thing, which we says, I'm going to create you from one soul. Well, then who created the soul? Where does the soul come from? What is this the soul? What does it actually consist of? Where does it come from? What does it contain? Why is the soul of the woman contained in the soul of the man? How does that work? It doesn't say.
But the thing is, you see, if you go through the Islamic narrative of those who believe that mankind was in heaven, we agreed to test, and then we came to earth, well, the soul must have originated in heaven, and the physical body, as it is in Islamic parlance, is nothing more than an avatar that the soul resides in to live in this earthly realm, that we have no recollection of the spirit realm. We've been sent down here by Allah, unknowingly. He's transferred the soul of every human being at the moment of conception. When a man and woman come together, he transfers the soul randomly. He just picks. I don't know what the order of selection is or how it's selected, what the process is. Allah, I'm just going to assume, because there's no details there, that Allah selects the soul from heaven and transfers it to the womb of at the moment of conception inside a woman, and then the test thus begins. But that doesn't seem to match what we've already discussed in Islam about the angel that comes to the womb and decides whether it's going to have a good life or a bad life, what sex it's going to be, and when it's going to die. Because we have to remember, Islam also teaches that Allah has predetermined when every human being is going to die. So all those factors and all those teachings of Islam have to be brought into this verse to understand it better. But the more we introduce other ayahs and other hadith into this verse, the more convoluted and confusing it becomes.
So why didn't they ask Dr. Moore? He could have explained it.
Why didn't Dr. Moore become a Muslim if he was so convinced by it?
No, but they should have. I mean, if they would have waited with the Quran, they could have asked the people who know, because that's what the book says. If you don't know something, ask the people who do. Okay. Well, Dr. Moore knows, and he would have explained it to them. Then they would have, done away with all this created you from one soul, which again, Muslims are so fond of asking, well, if the universe originated from something, where does the universe originate from? Well, I'm asking, where does the soul originate from? There's no indication here where this soul came from. Did it always exist? Was it part of God? Well, yeah, everything. Yeah, actually, it's true. This soul must be part of God. So I am part of God because everything that existed was God. And when God created everything, it must have been from out of him to get some substance, because matter doesn't come from nothing. So you must take a piece of God to create the universe. So I'm a part of a God. Wow, that's cool.
Yeah, because in the spirit realm, there is no physical matter. That's the point, isn't it? They're applying physical dimensions to the spirit, or physical properties to the spirit realm, which doesn't make sense.
Yeah. And I would love to know, some sort of explanation what this thing is with the one soul. I mean, if everything is created from one soul, and then exactly what you are saying, this is then it manifests itself in the womb. Yeah, and then what? What happens? We don't know. We do not know. All right, let's go to the next one. We're not going to get any further with this one. So 4.2, give the orphans their properties. Oh, what? Have I missed something? This is 4.1.
Yeah, you're right.
Mankind fear your Lord, fear Allah, indeed is ever over you an observer. He's a voyeur. Okay, so what a pervert. He checks on me day and night and all the time, checks whatever I'm doing. Okay, then, and give the orphans their properties. Okay, so now we're switching from fear Allah to the orphans. Okay, give the orphans their properties and do not substitute the defective for the good, and do not consume their properties into your own. Indeed, that is ever a great sin. Now that sounds nice. To orphans restore their property, nor substitute worthless things for good ones. Devour not their substance with your own, for this is indeed a great sin. Wow, excellent. Now that's nice.
But what was the situation for this to come about, though? Because
they were taking the orphan. Okay, the situation, the way that it was, is a lot of people, men especially, were dying because they were fighting the different wars in the time. And then what happened is that because the men were dead, they had lots of orphans, they had lots of women around that didn't have husbands. So they had a very funny situation that there was an abundance of children and women. And this is then what happened, that the remaining men selected the rich orphans, and they exactly did this. They consumed the property of the orphans into their own. So the Muslims at the time, or the Arabs at the time, were real bastards. And now somebody comes along and says, no, you're not allowed to do that. This is actually, I think this is good. Okay, what do you think?
Well, I'm just reading an account here where some of the men were marrying orphan girls in order to get their hands on the properties.
Correct. Exactly.
Yeah.
And this is why somebody said, no, don't do that. And this is why I think this is a good idea. Give unto the orphans their wealth, which is with you when they reach the legal age. Okay, yes. Do not consume their wealth. So this is just a repetition. The following was revealed to. Okay, so this is the background. The following was revealed regarding an orphan who demanded his property from his guardian, but was refused it. So give the orphans, the underage ones that have no father, their property. Now, the funny thing is, an orphan. Okay, for me, for the last, I don't know how many months since my childhood, I have always lived under the impression that an orphan is a child that has lost mother and father. And now I'm being introduced to a concept where this does not mean who has lost mother and father, but has just lost a father. And this is quite strange. Do you have an opinion on this? Do you have differing information?
I think on this one, I don't have any different information on this, but I have to ask the question. What was the situation at the time where orphans became so obvious, or there were so many that a verse had to be in heaven, an eternal verse in heaven, had to be transferred to earth during this moment in time? I don't understand what the if you like, what the community was like. Was there that much of a proliferation of orphans at this time that this verse needed to be around?
This is my information, yes.
So, but how would there be so many orphans?
Because this is exactly the point. The orphan is not an orphan. This is somebody who's lost their father because the men were killed in battle.
But if that's not an orphan, though.
Well, this is exactly my question. Exactly.
Yeah, but I can't answer a question when you know, if this is yet again, in my understanding, then Islam taking a word and making it mean something completely different.
And this is what I don't understand. So what we have to do is we have to take here the definition that orphan means no father. Because remember, in Islam, it's the paternal system that counts. Okay, it's the father, it's the male. The mother doesn't count. So the mother is just the incubator. The father counts. He is the one. You need to know who the father is, and that's the most important thing. So if the father then is not available, the mother loses her identity because the wife, the female, receives or gets or whatever her identity through the husband. And now suddenly the husband is not there, and now the children don't have a father. And that is why in Islam, if the father is there, they don't give a continental damn about the mother.
No.
It's the father that counts, and that's why they call it an orphan.
But then that just goes back to verse 1, where men and women are not being created equal.
Yes, exactly. So we have to live now, we have to work under the premise that an orphan, as defined in Islam, is the one where the father dies. So if the mother dies, nothing happens. But the father, that is the thing. If he dies, then they're an orphan. And then the underage ones that have no father, their property, when they have reached maturity, do not exchange the evil, the unlawful for the good, the lawful taking one place. Okay, so this is just repeating this. Yes. So this is important to know, that in the future we just look at orphans in the context of fatherless. So give the orphans their property. And yes, I think this is a positive sentence, because it says don't screw over the orphans. Don't take advantage of their age. Don't take advantage of their lack of information, knowledge, or savvy, or whatever you want to call it. Don't you abuse them, and just to increase your wealth. And I think this is what makes it positive. Or is there anything negative in this?
No, I don't know. To be honest with you, it's kind of like you don't need religion to tell you this.
No, you don't. But come on, I'm being generous. There's something good in the Quran. Let me celebrate it accordingly, fittingly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
if it's genuine, I mean, I have commended the Quran on 2 occasions. One about where it talks about looking at creation to see the intelligent designer behind it, and one previous verse back about a woman is a garment to a man and a man is a garment to a woman. I thought that was a lovely way of putting the relationship between a man and a woman together. But we're coming to this chapter now, and it just seems that what was revealed earlier, I think in chapter 2, does not seem to be consistent with what we're reading now in chapter 4.
No, of course not. It's the Quran. Come on. Okay, next we have 4:3. Okay, I think we're going to spend the rest of the show. If you fear that you will not deal justly with the orphan girls, only girls, okay, then marry those that please you of women, 2 or 3 or 4. But if you fear that you will not be just, then 1 or those your right hand possesses. That is more suitable, that you may not incline. Injustice is not there. So Yusuf Ali says, if you fear that you shall not be able to deal justly with orphans, marry women of your choice, 2 or 3 or 4. But if you fear that ye shall not be able to deal justly, then only 1, or that your right hand possesses, that will be more suitable to prevent you from doing injustice. Go.
Sorry, was you talking to me, Stops?
I just said go.
Well, yeah, to be honest with you, this is when I look back to my childhood, this will be one of the, I don't know, I was trying to think about this the other day. Was this the first moment where I actually started questioning Islam as a child? Or was this the second thing that I came across? And I can't decide, but this will be even the first or the second thing that I came across that I thought, this is wrong. The idea that you can have 2 or 3 or 4 wives. I think within the human psyche, no matter what your disposition is as far as faith is concerned, whether you believe in an intelligent designer or not, it's within the human psyche that having 1 wife seems to make sense. Having 2, 3, or 4 doesn't sit right with human beings.
Yeah, but remember the scenario that we were basing this on, that we were discussing in sentence number 2, then sort of explains it, because you had an abundance of women because the men were killed in battle. So because the women don't have anything. Remember, the women are not getting educated. The women are not being able in those days to to provide. You need the husband to provide. He is the caretaker of the family. This is the way that it works.
Yeah, but this is an eternal verse. This was in heaven, uncreated.
Petty.
Sorry? This is an eternal verse. This is a guidance for mankind. So this isn't a momentary thing now. This isn't for, say, the first 20 or 30 years of Islam while all the men are going to war and coming back dead, because they're supposed to die anyway, because Allah has said in the previous chapter that's when they were ordained to die anyway.
Yeah.
So this
Okay,
is not,
let's see if we can get some structure into this. Okay, let's see how many elements you have in this one sentence. The first element is if you fear that you will not deal justly with the orphan girls. Okay, now this is the first element, right? In this sort of sequence. So you have
what men marrying orphan children.
no, deal justly.
But what's dealing justly got to do with marrying women?
Okay, that's the first element. The second element is marry women. The third element is 2, 3, or 4. So first is talking about dealing justly with orphans. Then it's talking about marrying women. Then it's talking about how many. Then it talks if you fear that you will not be just, then marry only one. This is the next element. And then the following element is then those that your right hand possesses. And then the last element is that is more suitable, that you may not incline to do injustice. So these are the different elements. So the first element is the orphans, then marry the women, then the amount, then only one, then the slaves, and then that is more suitable, that you may not incline. So there's another claim. So we have these 5 elements. So let's take a look at the first one. If you fear that you will not deal justly with the orphan girls. Now, it's talking about orphan girls, where we just read in the sentence before, don't do them over, don't screw them around, don't abuse them, don't take their property, treat them fairly. And here it says, if you fear that you will not deal justly with the orphan girls. And then it's sort of raising the expectation that now comes an explanation what you should be doing if you fear that you will not deal justly with them.
Can I just bring out a point from Islamic Studies info? It
Yeah.
says here, there is the view of Aisha, who says that men tended to marry orphan girls who were under their guardianship out of consideration for either their property, beauty, or because they thought they would be able to treat them according to their whims, as they had no one to protect them. After marriage, some men sometimes committed excuses against these girls. It is in this context that Muslims are told that if they fear they're not able to do justice to the orphan girls, then they should marry other girls whom they like. This
Okay.
interpretation seems to be supported by verse 127 of this surah. So this is what I was going back to, that when it talks about, if it's talking about orphan girls that's referring to, so these orphans are actually orphan girls, then it sits right with marry women of your choice. If it's just dealing with
Exactly.
orphans per se, then it doesn't sit in context with what's being said next in context of this verse.
Okay, this is why I said we need to go to sentence number 2, where we were talking about be fair to the orphan girls, and sort of carry this over into this sentence.
But the question I'd ask is, what are men doing marrying children if they're orphans? They're clearly, there's a disposition within the mind of these men for sexual gratification, as well as to try and rob them of any material assets they've gained as an inheritance.
Correct. That's the way I also understand it.
Yeah, absolutely. So that just shows the mindset. I mean, you'd have to look at this as well and think, why is Allah not condemning this mentality? He's not saying what you're doing is wrong. You should not be marrying children. You should not be robbing children. He's basically saying, well, if you can't be bothered to deal with them justly, just marry women of your choice that you can deal justly with.
Yeah.
Where's the sense of morality in Allah at this moment in time?
Well, okay, so if we take sentence number 2 and we say, okay, what we have is don't be unfair, don't screw them over, but what you should be doing instead is, if you want to marry someone, don't marry the orphan girls. Then, so if you fear, then marry those that please you of other, well, the other doesn't exist, please you of women. In other words, now take the women who are not orphan girls, whom you are not screwing over, but who are normal, regular women that you simply pay for, and then you can marry them and whatever. So this is the consequence. So what you do is the taking over from sentence number 2, be fair. And if you can't be fair, don't marry them. What you just said, Thunder, about don't just marry them for their wealth or beauty or whatever, sexual gratification. Then marry those which make more sense, which are legal to you.
But
That is the one element.
I'm looking at the point of view of that. Why is Allah not condemning the very act of marrying children in the first place?
Yeah, okay, that's another story which we will get to later.
Okay.
So the point here is that it's talking about orphan girls, and this is the problem, because they can be varying ages, and what age, then this will be clarified later.
Because
So
the responsible thing is, if there are orphan girls where their fathers have gone to fight for Allah and they're dead, okay, fine. You could Muhammad could argue, say, yeah, but they were ordained to die at that moment in time anyway, so hence why they died. It wouldn't have made a difference where they were. Well, why weren't these men coming back who were surviving or in the vicinity because they didn't go to the war for whatever reason, not adopting these orphans? That would be the responsible thing to do. That would be the more, Islam could have something to boast about here. Look, we adopted these orphans so that they weren't
they did. They did.
Well, they were marrying them.
No, they actually adopted them.
Well, it says here they were marrying them. This is one of the understandings that they have. They were marrying them for whatever motive that they had, and then getting rid of them for flimsy excuses.
Well, a lot of them were adopted initially, and we will see later what happens with this adoption.
Oh yeah,
but they did do that. So they adopted them, and some took the girls and married them, and some for whatever. If they were young, they liked it, whatever. Then marry those. So we have element number 1, element number 2, element number 3. Now it's 2 or 3 or 4. Now, this is exactly the scenario again, that there was an abundance of females at the time, in the situation, in the region. We're talking only about the Arabian Peninsula now, where the people allegedly came from Mecca and then went everywhere and started fighting. Now, the way that the Sunnah describes this is they were being attacked. So they were just sitting there peacefully and somebody attacked them. Of course, this is not correct, because you have the contradictions which actually show you what happened, how they were going, and they were being obnoxious and arrogant and telling everybody else they were idiots and assholes and they'd better convert or else. And then you have the story about when Muhammad was chucked out and he was nearly killed, and he ran away to Medina. And then in Medina, he set up shop, and then he gathered strength, and then he became arrogant there. And then we have the stories of how the Meccans were taunting them. There's a whole lot of stories. So if you read the biography by Ibn Hisham, it's fascinating. If you hear the stories, how they contradict each other. How you hear how Muhammad, he broke treaty after treaty after treaty just because he felt like it. He was just like Trump. He also said, listen, I don't want to, but now I feel the situation has changed for me, and now I want something else. So fuck you, I'm going to just erase you. And this is so hypocritical. If you see the claims around, that he never chopped down a tree, he never killed a woman, he never did this. He did all these things. Okay, but that's not the propaganda that you hear. But anyway, we are talking about the Quran, all right? So there were a lot of men. There was a lack of men, abundance of women, a lot of orphans, well, where the father was missing. And this is the situation. This is why this was allowed. And this was the point that they were trying to make. Listen, even if you fight for us, even if you come back wounded or something, then at least you can go down and marry some other girls, and even young ones. Try to be fair to them. Don't overdo it. But you can marry 3 or 4 women, because we're giving you a lot of booty, so you can afford this.
But the thing
because
is,
remember, you need to pay.
but this is supposed to be an eternal verse. This is supposed to be a pattern now
Well,
that
yeah,
we live to today. So the idea of having 2, 3, or 4 wives it does not make sense. It doesn't make sense because the natural inclination of a man isn't to have 2, 3, or 4 wives. If he is,
really, I beg
well,
to differ. There's a lot.
you told me you regard the last time you saw an angel, you married her. You really think that that angel would want you to marry another angel? It's not natural for a woman to be sharing one man. So just as
I wouldn't generalize this. There
well,
are situations where it does work.
if it was natural or there was an inclination, it will become a part of society in some way or another, and we wouldn't be questioning it or be repelled by it or find it a repugnant practice. It
Yeah,
will
but
be.
what is natural? Yeah, but Sandra, that changes also. I understand your point, though, and I totally agree with you that it is supposed to be eternal. It is to be like forever and ever, amen. And if you apply that, then it's totally wrong because we don't do that today anymore. It's called bigamy, and this is not going to work today.
Can
So this is 2 or 3 or 4.
can
But
I just
if you
that some Muslim apologists would turn around and say that the Quran is way ahead of its time because it is now here prophesying that there will be a future in mankind where the Earth's population will be 1/4 men and 3/4 women. This is why the Quran has allowed polygamy of up to 4 wives, because you'd have certain areas of the world where they wouldn't be able to get a husband. So
yeah.
this is a
And this is
miracle.
what Zakir Naik is saying. This is his argument that there are more women, and this is why it's even it's true today. And he says, yeah, in Russia, this is bullshit. It's not.
Can I just add on to that? This is how it's bullshit. It's actually contrary and actually goes the other way. There are
Yeah.
more men in certain areas. Nationally, geographically, and demographically, the ratio is normally 51% women, 49% men. That's a generalization, but the figures are in that area, thereabouts around the world. However, there are certain regions in the world where the number of men far outweigh disproportionately that there are more men to women, and this is where female gender apartheid has taken place when parents have found out that they've been impregnated with a daughter, and they've had strange miscarriages or they've had abortions, predominantly in India and in China, where they've had the one child policy before its removal. There are certain areas in China where there are something like 1,000 to 1. I stand to be corrected on that figure, but it's actually more men than women in certain areas that have caused the problem.
Okay. Now, if you fear that you will not be just, then marry only one.
But you
Okay.
can't be just. You can't be just. Even if you have 2, 3, or 4, even if you have 2 wives, you cannot deal with a pair of them justly. That doesn't make sense in the slightest. One will always be, you can't be a slave to 2 masters, so to speak. You can't be a husband to 2 wives. I don't. Maybe some men can be, but generally speaking, I cannot see men. And we've got men in the notes here. Put your thoughts down. Do you think that you could be fair? Being honest speaking, do you think you could be fair to 2 wives, 3 wives?
That's not the question. The question is, if you fear that you will not be just, I can be convinced that I will be fair to both, or 3, or 4, or 5, or 6.
But that's rationalization, though, isn't it? If you think
Exactly. This is the whole point. So it just says if you fear that you will not be just. So this is not saying that if you really are just. This is a different story. So if you say that if you already have doubt that you can't do it, well, then don't go and do it, because then it's going to definitely go into disaster. But if you really put your back into it and you really try and be just to all of them, then maybe you've got the ability to pull it off. But if you already have doubt, then don't even try it. This is what I read here.
But then the interesting thing is what gets said next. That if through that rationalization.
Okay. Now, this is, but if you fear that, then marry only one. And if you can't even do that, in other words, don't marry the orphan girls, marry other women. But if you don't think that you can, then, or you can't afford to, remember, you need to pay all the time. If you can't afford anyone, then what your right hand possesses. Now, I need to go and look what they use here, because normally they use this mamalakat aymanukum, and this in Arabic means your right hand possesses. In other words, it translates as slaves, which modern Muslims, because they are better than their God, try and change a little bit so that it is just another employee. But this mamalakat aymanukum is exactly this, with the right hand possesses. So we'll have to look at the real words to see what this is. And normally this is translated as slaves. And this means that if you paid for a slave, you don't need to pay again for another wife, but you can go and marry your slave girl, and that's it.
Can I just read a section of a book by Sunat K. I can't even pronounce this name. It's a book released in Lahore, third edition, released in 1975, pages 307 to 316. But I'm just going to read a paragraph from this book. And it says here, this is based on the material that we've just read now. And listen to the rationalization here. Some people who have been overwhelmed and overawed by the Christianized outlook of Westerners have tried to prove that the real aim of the Quran was to put an end to polygamy, which in their opinion is intrinsically evil. Since it was widely practiced at the time, however, Islam confined itself to placing restrictions on it. Such arguments only show here's the point, the mental slavery to which these people have succumbed. That polygamy is an evil per se is an unacceptable proposition. For under certain conditions, it becomes a moral and social necessity. If polygamy is totally prohibited, men who cannot remain satisfied with only one wife will look outside the bounds of matrimonial life and create sexual anarchy and corruption. This is likely to cause much greater harm than polygamy to the moral and social order. For this reason, the Quran has allowed those who feel the need for it to resort to polygamy. Those who consider it an evil in itself may certainly denounce it in disregard of the Quran and may even argue for its abolition. But they have no right to attribute to such a view to the Quran, for it has expressed its permission of polygamy in quite categorical terms. Even indeed, there is not the slightest hint in the Quran that could justify the conclusion that it advocates abolition of polygamy. What more do you need for an absolutely absurd rationalization to justify polygamy?
No, that's what happens. This is how it's interpreted at the end of the day.
You know, that first of all, it's and that nobody is suggesting that polygamy is intrinsically evil. But then to turn around and say that what was the point there? That polygamy is an evil per se is an unacceptable proposition. For under certain conditions, it becomes a moral and social necessity. Since when? Okay, if you didn't have the Quran and the Quran didn't say allow it, when did polygamy become a social necessity outside of the Islamic culture? Surely you would see evidence of polygamy being a necessity. You don't need the Quran to come and tell you that if it's a social necessity, because that's talking about the human psyche there. That men who have this need will want to do that. That's
Correct.
not what it's saying here. So it's actually a disgusting, despicable rationalization. If polygamy is totally prohibited, men who cannot remain satisfied with only one wife. What kind of men are we talking about here that cannot remain satisfied with one wife?
Yeah, but it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
But also,
You can't have. There are some men that are different. There are some women that are different. Okay, so you can't generalize. You can't say, look, you need to do it like that. It's different.
The great majority on the earth scene, though, irrespective.
But it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what the great majority is. If it depends. We should be open to any kind of variation to the left or to the right. It doesn't really matter.
If this is a God, this God needs to be consistent. He created Adam. He created Adam with one wife, and if we're in the likeness of Adam, then why was Adam only with one wife and not have four? If we're in the likeness of him, why is it then that he only had one wife? Then some generations later, men started to have the need to have more than one wife. Why was that?
Maybe that was evolution. I don't know. I don't know. But Thunder, you can't. Yeah, but I don't think that we should be looking to have a doctrine that restricts everybody and makes everybody identical so that we are automatons. This is why I think we should leave a little bit of leeway for people, so I can condemn certain things, but I don't have to go and say, okay, we need to criminalize it, we need to go and forbid this. And so I think we are in a situation today in a culture where we shun bigamy, I think. So we have a legal construct where we have the family idea or the concept of a family as one man and one woman, or what we have changed now in the last 20 years, that is two persons. And it doesn't matter what these persons are as being a family. So we're already changing things in the last 20 years. While we are watching, things are changing. I never knew that this would be possible. If anybody would have told me, I would have said, no, this is impossible. And yet here we are. It has changed. So it should be two people who love each other, who want to go into a deeper, longer commitment. And that's fine. But if you want to have an open relationship, if you want to do that's also fine. I mean, who am I going to judge what other people do? If you are in a stable relationship and then you still have outside sex or something, there's nothing wrong with that. We shouldn't criminalize it. I don't want it. I don't need it. So, but I'm not going to go and tell other people what to do with their sex lives.
Okay, fine. You're happy with men having different women and different children with different women in your social outlook. That's fine. With different men bringing up other men's children in your outlook. That's fine. It's not in mine, but that's not what I'm discussing.
It's personal.
What I'm trying to discuss here is, why did Allah create Adam and Eve as one man, one woman, then later on down the line said that actually one man can have four women. And if woman is created in the image of man, in the same likeness, then why is it a man can have up to four wives and a woman can't have up to four husbands?
Well, the answer is very easy. I don't even have to play devil's advocate here. It's very easy because it says you can if you want to. You don't have to. There is no command here that says you must have four wives.
Yeah, but the ayah then concludes by saying, deal justly with them, then only one, or captive what your right hand possesses. So it's basically, so women can also be the property of men, that if you can't deal with them justly in a marriage sense, you can still have them as sexual agents of yours, but you don't have, there's no obligation for you to treat them justly as you would a wife.
That's what it says.
Yeah. So what my point is then, how is that godly and how is that consistent? If
it's not. Nobody's saying that it is.
Yeah, but that's what I'm trying to get at. The unjustness of how a woman is treated in the eyes of Allah and Muhammad. There's
so you've been saying this now for half an hour, and that is the conclusion. It's not right.
Amongst many things, I'm trying to point out how immoral this God is.
Okay, all right, yeah, of course it is. I mean, the whole concept of slavery is immoral. Come on. And if the thing is that if you want to have a marriage and you want to have an outside relationship and everybody is okay with it, well, then it's fine. Then where's the problem? But then you don't need to go to slave girls. You don't need to keep them as slaves. You can have a relationship with another woman if you want to, and if your wife is okay with that, then you can just ask them and that it's consensual. And this is the whole point. What I find immoral is the right hand possessors. Is immoral in my eyes, that you have slaves. In other words, what I find immoral is that you need to, if you want to marry a woman, if you want to have sex with another woman, you first need to marry her. You need to pay for her. Okay, so you first pay, then you marry, then you have sex. All right, then you can say talak talak talak. I divorce you. There you go. Fuck off. And then the next one, please. This is what I find immoral. Or if you don't like that, you can just go and buy a girl in the market. So then you don't need to pay for this. You can just buy her in the market, keep her for 3 months, and then turn her loose again and sell her to the next guy. So that the girls, which if a girl is somehow good looking or in some way enticing, then she gets bought, and then the next guy says, Jesus, she's nice, I'd like to have her. How much you want for her? It's like a car. So if I like your car, how much you want for your car? Oh, brilliant! Here you go, 20,000 is yours. That's not. That is what I find immoral. If you want to have more women, that's okay. It depends. It's personal.
I'm not challenging how people want to live their lives, and don't think for a moment. I've already commented on, if people want to live, relationships where they're same sex or whatever, that's your choice. I'm not going to condemn you. As a human being, you're equal to me. I wouldn't condemn that, not in the slightest. However, we're looking at, this is supposed to be a religion sent by God. The very first verse in this chapter is about how God has made a woman from a man in his likeness. And we've already said...
It doesn't say in his likeness.
Oh, okay. It says there, I've created you from a single bird. like his nature, or created of like nature. That's the Yusuf Ali translation I've got. In his nature.
Okay,
If
the words don't exist.
if it's in his nature, then why is it that God is treating women so, if like, reprehensibly in comparison to the man?
Okay, and now we get to the real point here, because it says here, to the men, marry those that please you, 2 or 3 or 4. Where does it say, girls, if you want to, and there happens to be an abundance of men, then go and marry 2, 3 or 4. And that is the point that Dawn of It is just making. And this is, sorry, Thinking Clearly. This is what Thinking Clearly is just saying. This is exactly the point. You cannot say that only men are allowed to do that.
I think the moral arguments as far as Islam is concerned, because when I've had this discussion with Muslims, is that if a man has 4 wives and 4 women get pregnant, he knows all those 4 children are his. But if one woman has 4 husbands and she gets pregnant, she doesn't know who the father is.
Yes, that is the argument. That's hypocritical. It's terrible. It's awful. It's misogynistic. It's everything, because what you're saying is the only thing that matters is the father.
Yeah.
We don't care what the mother says. It's important who the father is, not who the mother is. The mother is just the incubator. The important part is the father. That's what I said in the beginning. And that is where it's really, really getting bad. And especially after all this, that you are allowed to marry your slaves, after that you have several wives but not several husbands, it says that is more suitable, that you may not incline to do injustice. That is pathetic. That is really, really pathetic.
But you get the idea of Muhammad and Allah's view of women when it says, when you die, you'll get 72 virgins, or the witness of a woman is.
Yeah, it's demeaning. Yeah, it's demeaning. Yeah.
Absolutely. So you get the sense of these incremental little jigsaw pieces that when you put together, you see the bigger picture.
Of course.
Allah Muhammad hated women.
So if we look at the wording now, because I'm very curious about this, and one thing I know already, I'm going to point that out. And it says here, you fear, and then you will be able to do justice to the orphans. Okay, what to you, the women? And now this is the first thing I want to point out. It says here that the wa is and then in 3s. Okay, so this is the wa is the prefix, it's a conjunction, and then you have a male accusative noun. All right, and the funny thing is that the wa means and the funny thing is that there are other in the corpus. They've changed it now. It actually used to say wa means and yet what do? They translate it as or, which would be our. So they completely change it. Again, the wa, in other words, this prefix means and yet they translate it as or. And that is why there's actually a fatwa from Egypt. They came and they said, well, we need to change it because it's not 4, it's actually 9, because it's 3 and it's 2 and 3 and 4. So 2 and 3 is 5 and 4 is 9. So, and Muhammad is said to have had 9 children. So we should allow every Muslim to have 9 wives and not 4. And this is so dishonest, how the people and Muslims will not accept this. If you go to a Muslim, you say, well, actually, you're allowed 9. And the funny thing is that if you argue with them, they will come to, I don't know what kind of excuses to say that, well, in Arabic, different words can have different meanings. So all of a sudden, or can be and. And that is crazy. Okay, so this is a funny thing. But if that not you can do justice, or what possesses your right hand, and this is exactly this. This is exactly this malakat aymanukum. So this is exactly what your right hand possesses, which is slaves. So this is exactly the translation.
And for any Muslims that are listening to the show, Sorted Jannah, then you can go speak to us, Asim Al Hakim, who on his YouTube channel has commented on this verse about sexual relations with what your right hand possesses in today's context.
And this is the problem. This is where I think this is horrible. When it comes to exactly to slavery, this is what I think. I mean, there's things like misogyny, which I find really, really bad. Child abuse, I find really, really bad. Genital mutilation, I find really bad, and slavery. And those are the parts that I hate most about how Islam handles them. Now, the right hand cutting off. Okay, yes, it's brutal. Yes, it's backwards. Yes, it's ancient. Blah blah blah. Absolutely, but it's not on the same level in my eyes, anyway. According to my morality, it's not on the same level as this here. And this is why this is so terrible. And I'm glad that the Thunder pointed this out earlier, that people leave Islam for exactly reasons like this. If they see this and they think, hang on, there's something wrong here. Something doesn't gel. First, it says that God is all forgiving and just and all this. And suddenly God thinks it's just that you can have sex with your slave girls. How is that being just? Then you start thinking, and then you start having doubts. And then, this is how it happens.
Yeah, it's interesting what you're saying there. I was just looking at the verse there as well about what your right hand possesses, and your world outlook. I mean, the inhumaneness of having another human being as a possession. I mean, this is supposed to be to time indefinite. This is an eternal book for mankind of guidance. Can you imagine a world like this? The Muslims want the world to be an Islamic world, or an Islamic caliphate all over the world.
Yeah, now they're going back to the original Islam. They're saying the original Islam of the Prophet, this was the best Islam. This is exactly this Islam.
Yeah, and what kind of a world would you be looking at?
Yeah,
if you just close your eyes and imagine it, look at the despicable state the planet would be in.
Yeah. And just to clarify, in 4.3, it does not say that you should have sex with slave girls. Okay, so here you don't have the same meanings that you will have later on, where it says that you can have sex with all of them, blah blah blah. Here it's really about marriage. Here, marry that which Allah has made lawful to you. Marry 1, 2, 3, or 4, but do not marry more than 4 wives or so on. This is really about marriage. And if you look at the wording, even in the root, there is nothing here about only having sex. There are other verses which will do that, absolutely, but not in this one. So here, it's not this nikah, okay? It's this inkihu, and this I believe has a different connotation, which is really marriage. So I think this is different. Here, I think this is really about marriage. This is not about just having sex. There are others, I agree with you, and they will come up, yes, but not this one. At least for me. They are lying in the translation. Yes, they are. I've just shown you where they are lying. I've just shown you this word "or," for example, is lying in the translation. So this is a mistake in the Quran that everybody says it's 2 or 3 or 4, but this is wrong. It actually says "and." Okay, Islam Safari, can you explain how this marrying the slave girls, how this is not marriage but having sex only? Because nikah is sex. I agree with you. But is this the same word that is being used here? Is this this is not the nikah. This is not this NKH. Is this the nikah? Ask Christian Prince. Islam is talking about nikah with a hand. Yeah, but this is not this nikah with a hand. This is different. I think there are other verses, but not this one. No, but hang on. How can Inca equal to Nika? I don't know if this is correct. Okay, I could be wrong. Okay, I'm not perfect in this, and I think even the professional translators will not automatically agree with you that this is only about sex. I know there are others. Okay, if this is NKH and this is actually then Nika, if this is the root, and then this belongs to the Nika group, and then this is the same word, then okay, then so be it. But reading this, I do not see here that this is pertaining only to sex. Here, I actually see that this is about marriage. I see here, this is a standard marriage declaration. And it says that if you want to, you can marry four. I think that's it. But it doesn't say that you can have sex with four girls at the same time, but not more. Okay. Zawai marriage. Zawaj. Zawaj is marriage, and nikah is also sex. Okay. I do not know. You might be. It could be correct. Absolutely. And I'm not saying that I am 100% right. I'm just saying from the way that I'm reading it, that we are talking about marriage here, and it would be better. And this is always the point that Rob is making, quite rightly so. It would have been better if God had been, or the author, or whoever. If people think that this is a God, then this God failed once again because he didn't make it clear. If Zawaj is marriage, then it should have said this here instead of using nikah, which can also be sex. So God could have been very clear, or whoever wrote this Quran could have been very clear, but they chose not to be. Now, if this is something that you can interpret to mean something else, I do not know. Yeah, okay. All right. It's noted. So Islam Safari is saying there is a possibility that this nikah could be interpreted to mean sex. I do not know if you use sex in these sentences. If you fear that you will not deal justly with the orphans, then have sex with those that please you of other women, 2 or 3 or 4. Does that make sense in this context? No. But if you fear that you will be just, then have sex only with one. That also doesn't make sense. It does make sense if you say those, have sex with those that your slave girls, because this is repeated all over the Quran over and over and over. That is, yes, here, yes. But the others, it doesn't really make sense. Ask the Arabs if you can do nikah to their girls. Well, obviously not. I mean, they would kill me if I were to ask them if I could marry their girls. I've had, with the parents initially did not really mind. And I was actually invited to their house and so on. And they introduced me as the boyfriend, and then this was okay. But then after a while, they must have gone to the Imam or Ayatollah or whatever. And then they said, no, I'm not allowed to see the girl anymore, because the Muslim girl is not allowed to see a non-Muslim. So, okay. You have to pay them equally, okay, but you don't have to pay the slave girls. That's the advantage. Thunder, any further comments on this sentence, or shall we move on?
Let's move on.
Okay. All right, then for 4, give the women upon their marriage their gifts graciously, but if they give up willingly to you anything of it, then take it in satisfaction and ease. Give the women their dawah as a free gift, but if they of their own good pleasure remit any part of it, take it and enjoy it with good cheer. Okay. I don't know why. Okay, this is a throwaway sentence, really. I mean, okay, you need to pay the women. Now, the funny thing is, here it says, give the women their gifts graciously. But this is being interpreted as you need to pay the father But here it doesn't mention the father at all. Here it mentions the woman. Here you give money to the woman to have sex with her. And if she gives it back to you, if you're good at bed or something, then she gives it back to you and she says, no, I enjoyed this so much, take the money back. Or I'll give you 50% discount today or something. So you can, this is one that you can, I don't know, interpret either which way.
Yes, for me, I read that and it's all about the dowry. If she gives it to her husband and she wants it back, or he can enjoy what part of it he gives her.
Well, what's the point of her giving it back? Well, I can think of the scenario that there is a man who is saving up, and then he's got, I don't know, $5,000 or something, and he goes to the father and says, "Listen, your daughter and I, we like each other. When I get married, here's $5,000," and then he gives it to the girl, $5,000, and then when they get married, she says, "Let us put this together into the pool, into the for pool, both of us to buy a house or I don't know what." And then she says, "Take 3,000 of this. I will just keep 2,000, just in case. But the 3,000, let's, put this into a joint account or something so that we both can access this." So this is a scenario that I can think of where this would apply.
Yeah, I see the logic in that.
Okay, let's take a look at the tafsirs if they disagree greatly. If you give them as a upon your marriage, but no, it's just repeating it. The of the owner court, this refers to now. This is also just repeating it. Okay. Then let's go to 4.5. Do not give the weak-minded your property.
Yeah.
Which Allah has made a means of sustenance for you, but provide for them with it and clothe them and speak to them words of appropriate kindness. Oh, that's so sweet. Okay, to those weak of understanding, that's actually quite good. To those weak of understanding, make not over your property, which Allah hath made a means of support for you, but feed and clothe them therewith and speak to them words of kindness and justice. Oh, that's cute. How can I remember? I don't remember. I must admit, I do not remember this sentence. So I think I must. It's always been a case of, okay, let's tick that off as it's a giveaway. I mean, this is something. I can't remember who said it. A measure of the society that you live in is how they treat the weak or the underprivileged. There you go. I can't remember who said this, but this is so true. That's so true. How you treat them is a measure of how good the culture is, the society is. Yeah.
Can I just read the Islamic Studies info interpretation of this verse?
Sure.
This verse covers a wide spectrum of meaning. It emphasizes to the community of believers that wealth is one of the main supports of human life. It should not be left, therefore, at the mercy of those who are incompetent to handle it properly. By misusing wealth, such people might destroy the basis of social and economic life and wreck the moral foundations of human society. The right to private property is not absolute. If a person is incapable of exercising this right properly, and he might cause grave social harm by wanton expenditure, then his right may be forfeited. The necessities of such person's life should always be provided for, but so far as the exercise of his proprietary rights is concerned, due to restrictions should be placed on it in order that the owner is restrained from spending his resources on brazen disregard for the dictates of morality, collective welfare, and the economic interests of the community. What do you think to that?
Well, yes. This is what I would take from reading this sentence. What I don't understand, what this has to do with marrying women.
What I don't understand is why does God have to reveal, have to reveal this from a book that's made clear, easy to understand,
Yeah.
designed for all eternity. These kind of things are already in place in non-Muslim societies, where things like this are already taken care of. From social structures that are in place without the influence of Islam. So
Women are property. Thinking clearly says, okay, the women are property, so don't give the weak-minded your women. No, but this is property which Allah has made a means of sustenance for you. That's not this.
yeah, I just don't understand why it takes a God to say something like this when
Yeah.
ungodly societies or un-Islamic societies have already come to this conclusion.
Yeah. But okay, this is not a bad sentence. This is not something that has to do with slavery or something like this. This is just a sentence. Treat the weak-minded. Okay. So that's good. Okay, then let's go to 4.6. Test the orphans. Now we're back to the orphans until they reach. Okay. Somebody just said it sounds like the financial advisor butted in. While we're talking about the orphans and marriage, suddenly the financial advisor came in and said, "Remember, listen. I just want to remind you, don't give the weak-minded something that is of value because they're going to stuff it up." And then we go back to, okay, test the orphans until they reach a marriageable age. This is funny. Then you perceive in them sound judgment, release their property to them, and do not consume it excessively and quickly, that they will grow up. And whoever is self-sufficient should refrain, and whoever is poor, let him take according to what is acceptable. Then when you release the property to them, bring witnesses upon them, and sufficient is Allah as accountant. Oh, Allah is also an accountant. Wow, that's brilliant. Make trial of orphans until they reach the age of marriage. Then you find sound judgment, release the property to them, but consume it not wastefully nor in haste against their growing up. If the guardian is well off, let him claim no remuneration, but if he's poor, let him have for himself what is just and reasonable. When you release the property to them, take witnesses in their presence, but all sufficient is Allah in taking account.
Yeah, Allah's an accountant, and he only charges 1/5 of the booty as a fee.
And he can't add up 2/3 and 1/3. Okay, but this is another. I have to say it. There's nothing bad here. Okay, at least not that I can see. Okay,
No,
so if the orphans are okay, then keep their marriage, keep it in a savings account or something, and then when they grow up, give them their money, release them into life, and then everything is cool. And have a witness there to do it at the same time. Brilliant. Nothing wrong with that. I mean, there's nothing that I would need the Quran for, but at least the Quran is not corrupting anyone here.
Ditto.
Okay, then let's carry on until 4.7. For men is a share of what the parents and close relatives leave, and for women is a share of what the parents and close relatives leave. Right? For men, what parents and close. For women, what parents and close relatives. So it's the same. Be it little or much, an obligatory share. Okay, this is a direct contradiction to what happens a couple of sentences later. From what is left by parents and those nearest related, there's a share for men and a share for... Actually, no. I'm wrong. There is no contradiction. Because it says there is a share for men and a share for women. Whether the property be small or large, a determinate or obligatory share. There you go. Okay, sorry. There's nothing contradictory here. It's just that if you read this the way that I was reading it, it looked as though it's identical because it says for men and for women is a share of what the parents and close relatives, but it doesn't say anywhere that the shares are identical. It just says an obligatory share. So this can mean anything. So all this says is there's a share for men, there's a share for women. Yeah, okay, great. What other options are there? Okay. Any question?
No.
Let me just check because this is too simple. I mean, Allah then mentioned the share of men and women, and because they were not in the habit of giving any inheritance to women. Okay, this is bullshit. Okay. I've done this. I've actually made a video about this. This is absolute nonsense. And you can see that this is nonsense because Khadija, the first wife of Muhammad, inherited the company and everything. Okay, so how can you say they were not in the habit of giving any inheritance to women when the first wife of Muhammad inherited a great wealth? it just doesn't make sense. I mean, don't they know what one and one? It's I don't even. Okay. Children saying unto the men belong the share of which parents, and unto the women a share of the whether it has as much or little, a determined share. But he did not specify these shares, not here anyway. Yes. Allah did expound consequently on the exact value of the shares. His verse was revealed about Huna and her daughters who had an uncle who did not give them anything. Okay. Khadija was by herself and it was from her dead ex-husband. Exactly. She's a widow. So she inherited great wealth. So Khadija inherited great wealth. And here it says they were not in the habit of giving any inheritance to women. So that's bullshit. I mean, it's very easy to see right from the word go. So this is stupid.
Yeah, which goes which goes to really, he had to wait till for Khadija to die before these verses started to come out, because they were never come out. And this goes back to I think other people have come to the same conclusion as well, that the woman who created Islam, Khadija, the slavery that she put with the most, if you like, liberated woman of her time, then after her death left a legacy that created the most impoverishment in every facet for women after her. A certain irony there.
It is. So you can't say that they don't inherit and then they inherit. It doesn't work. So anyway. When other relatives and orphans and the needy are present at the vision, then provide out of the estate and speak to them words of appropriate kindness. Okay, that's, this is the same as like if somebody enters the room, say hi. Okay, great. But if at the time of division, other relatives or orphans or poor are present, feed them and speak to them words in kindness and justice. Okay, that was brilliant. Okay, listen, Ahmed Mohammed, I can read what you are saying, but it's nonsense what you are saying. I've already debunked it. There's no point in repeating it, and there's no point in writing it in capitals. It doesn't help. It's bullshit. It doesn't matter whether there was no choice, for fuck's sake. She inherited. Did she inherit? Yes or no? And there it said they did not inherit. So not inheriting and inheriting are opposites. There's a contradiction. Whether there was no choice is of no relevance. Is that too much to get into your thick skull? My goodness. When other relatives are needy and present, speak to them words of kindness. Great. So 4:9, and let those fear as they had left weak offspring behind and feared for them, so let them fear Allah and speak words of appropriate justice. Let those have the same fear in their minds as they would have their own if they had left their helpless family behind. Let them fear Allah. Okay, it's also nice. Yeah. So let those who do everything think as though this is for themselves. So that's nice. Any comment on this?
No, it's following on the same pattern of niceness. For me, it's just kind of obvious logic, but I get what you're trying to do. You're trying to be kind, and all Muhammad has done is just religious. I don't know what made religion or religiouside common sense, and just turned common sense into religion.
Yeah. Okay, 4:10. Indeed, those who devour the property of orphans unjustly are only consuming into their bellies fire, and they will be burnt in a blaze. Those who unjustly eat up the property of orphans eat up a fire into their own bodies. They will soon be enduring a blazing fire.
Well, I was waiting for the fire to come, and there it is. Sooner or later, Allah's threat of fire. There we
go. And now I'm wondering if we should go to the next sentence at all today.
No, I think 10's a perfect one to end on, to be honest with you.
Because then we're going to start a long discussion, and I've actually prepared some slides for this, which I'll bring up next week. Then I've sent them to Rob because I thought we might be getting to 4, 11, 12 today. Which we actually, I'm quite happy we didn't. But he hasn't commented whether those make any sense, whether they're any good. I don't even know how to send you something. Can I send individual pages or something through the Facebook Messenger?
I don't know. Yeah, you can, because I've got the when you did the Dawa response pamphlet and such.
Ah, okay, so it's not only links. All right, then let me try and send them to you, and you tell me what you think of them. All right, then we'll leave it at that, at 4:10, and then we will go to 4:11 next week. Okay, let me just, this is the only thing that is interesting at the moment, is Ahmed Mohammed. Now, Ahmed Mohammed is a Quranist, and he thinks that we can take everything from there. Now, if I go and look at, I can't even remember which one it was. Was it this one? Here. Allah then mentioned the share of men and women in inheritance because they were not in the habit of giving any inheritance to women. Okay? They were not in the habit of giving any inheritance to women. All right? The following was revealed as a repudiation of pre-Islamic practices in which women and children were not given any inheritance. Okay, do you get this? So just because, now I'm talking to Ahmed now, because they were not in the habit is something that only Ibn Abbas says. The Jalalains don't even mention this. And I've seen a lot of apologists. Habit is not the same as never. It is the same. If you're not in the habit of doing it, then you're not doing it. Okay, that's it. If you and here it doesn't mention habit. Yes, I understand the difference between habit and never. Habit is not quite as exclusive as never, yes. But here, where does it say habit? It says women and children were not given any inheritance. It's not in the habit. Okay? So there you go. Do you want other things? It doesn't say about that. It says there are no inheritance rules for women. First, that not only men, but the women also have a share in inheritance. This is new. This verse contains 5 legal regulations about it. First, that not only men, but the women also have a share in inheritance. So they are saying before this, women did not have inheritance. And second, that it must be divided all heirs, however little it is. Brilliant. It must also be cut into 10 parts. Okay, it doesn't say that. However, may buy shares by musical consent, it doesn't say that. Third, the verse also implies that this law applies to all sorts of property, transferable, not transferable, agriculture. Okay, brilliant. It also includes slaves, by the way. So, yes, it says that the women suddenly get something, can inherit, which they couldn't do before, which is bullshit because they could. This is the point that I'm trying to make. Get it? Stop lying, crap. Up for fuck's sake. I'm not lying. Where am I lying? Don't you get it?
Just come on the show, Ahmed. Come on the show.
No, come on. He's talking too much nonsense. He just bullshits around. Okay, are you saying that it was common for people to include the women in the inheritance? Yes or no? So, yes or no? Was there inheritance for women? Yes or no? You read habit yourself. Okay, so you can't give a yes, no answer. Okay, cool. Then be a coward, doesn't matter. Okay, any other questions, comments, corrections, anything else that anybody wants to clarify or look at?
Just want to say thank you to our audience for listening this week, and your comments in the notes on the side. They have been appreciated and read, and thank you very much. If you have any further comments or questions, just pop them in the show notes in the comment section on YouTube during the course of the week. And we do communicate, we do read those comments. Even people on the other side of the world are listening to the show and making comments, and we do respond to them. So thank you very much indeed for all those who are listening.
Thank you. And please give us a thumbs up so that we will go and do some more shows. And then for next, sorry for annoying her. No, it's not sorry. No, you're not annoying. No. If if you have any contention, please bring it up. I mean, you don't have to do it the way that Ahmed does it. I mean, he's obnoxious, okay? But if there's anything, I like being taught something. I like to learn. I like to learn new things. And if I make a mistake, then I own up to it, and that's it. So if Islam Safari, the way that you did it is perfect. You just said, listen, that nikah can be nikah, and this is the inka is the same as the nikah. Okay, cool. If it's the same root, cool. Then it's very clear that Allah could have done a much better job of using marriage instead of using a word that can be misconstrued. All right, ladies, gents, and others, thank you very much.
Goodbye, everybody, and look forward to seeing you all next week.